said that it was in the Quran that Muslims have to hate and kill non-Muslims. We help take care of that. And very recently, this one woman, she was actually coming out of Noodle Wave when somebody just drove past and called out some insulting remarks to her, and we also talked to that person as well. So it's just really important that we get the numbers, and we also know what's happening out there, because we know what's happening, but we're not getting any calls, and so we can't actually report anything. So if we call this, we can report it to government, we can report it to law officials, and we can get something done, inshallah. So now let's get on to the main program. Alhamdulillah, we've been blessed with two wonderful speakers today. First one, Dr. Samad Khan is a community organizer and involved with many organizations in the DFW. Dr. Khan is a founder of Islamic Seminary of America and the Beacon of Light Initiative. He is also a Faith in Texas board member, advisory board member of CAIR DFW, an interfaith dialogue speaker and physician. Our second speaker is Yunus Larry Anthony, and he teaches Islamic and Middle East history at the Islamic Seminary of America. He is a two-time veteran, having served in the United States Navy and the Texas Army National Guard that deployed him to Iraq in 2006. Yunus earned his undergraduate degree from Southern Methodist University with a double major in history and political science. He also earned a minor in Arabic and studied in Morocco in an Arabic intensive program in which he earned an honors award in Arabic literature and language. Please give it up for our two speakers.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If it's okay for the sisters to move up, I mean, even if you want to sit behind the other ladies, it's important, inshallah, for this discussion, if you could do that, please. Inshallah, I'm going to have Brother Yunus Anthony start because he's older than me.
Astaghfirullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to make sure this is a little loud. Obviously everybody can hear me okay. So the basis of this discussion is we want this, and that's why we want everybody to move forward here. This is not about us talking at you, but this is like having a discussion and a conversation. So me and Samad don't want to be talking at you the whole time. We want y'all to definitely engage with us in this discussion. I don't know about being old, but thank you for reminding me of my age, Samad. I appreciate that.
Anytime there.
Yeah. Astaghfirullah. I guess giving it up for the elder. Again, thanks for reminding me of my age. So the purpose of this is the American, how to identify, identity, our American Muslim identity. How do we reconcile that? How do we understand that? How do we deal with it? Especially with most of you children here, most of you young adults and here, sorry. So y'all are trying to tackle the issue of being Muslim in this country and reconciling that with your American identity as well. So that's where we want to get, that's kind of where we want to jump off with the discussion, is what does that mean for you? What kind of challenges have you faced? And we definitely want to get that and get some interaction with that as well. And me and Samad, we of course, during that, we want to share some of our thoughts and opinions on that and some of the things that we've dealt with personally here, being Muslim and being American. I'm getting some feedback on here. So being American Muslim here as well.
I want to start with basically what the definition of an identity is. Webster's dictionary has a few different definitions, and I think that it's important to initially start with that. So, Bismillah. An identity is a distinguishing character of a person, especially information that distinguishes a person. Medically meaning the relation established by psychological identification. Sameness of essential character or aspect. So when we think about identity, we hear this many different meanings. I think it initially, at least confused me. At one point it says characteristics that are bring us together. And then it says characteristics that make us unique. So what really is an identity? You know, I was born and raised in upstate New York, you know, and alhamdulillah, I'm of Pakistani origin. You know, my parents are from Pakistan. And, you know, grew up in suburbia, grew up around mainly, you know, Caucasians, you know, played basketball and baseball in high schools. Average, you know, American kid, just like all of you guys. And, you know, we didn't really have these discussions growing up. You know, I was in a smaller city. And, you know, we were just kind of, you know, we were going to Islamic school on Sundays, we were praying our salah, we were reading our Quran, you know, we were fasting during Ramadan, but we weren't having really frank discussions about why we were doing these things. And so I almost felt like growing up I was living in two different worlds, you know, and you know, things began to happen. 9/11 occurred. I remember I was, you know, sitting. I was in college, early in college, not late. And we were watching as the, you know, the planes were hitting the towers, and you know, in Buffalo's a state school. There was many students from New York, from the city, you know, whose family members worked in the World Trade Center. So it was a very emotional time for all of us, and you know, it helped propel me into understanding, you know, who am I? You know, what are these people accusing, you know, my faith, or really my identity? They're accusing them of being these barbaric people, and it really made me kind of start thinking about what it is that makes my identity as a Muslim and as an American. And so this, you know, kind of began a long journey for me through the process of knowing, you know, who I really am. So I really want you guys to become part of this discussion right from the beginning. So I really want to just go around and kind of ask people, you know, what they think their identity is as a Muslim American in just a very brief snippet. Because then after we do that, I want to come back and speak to you guys a little bit about, you know, what I feel is very important to creating our identity here as Muslim Americans. So who wants to start? Who wants to start? Just talking about in one sentence what you feel your identity is as a Muslim American.
Come on, don't be shy.
I already found somebody who's going to be doing it, man. Thank you very much. I know you're looking behind you. What's the question? Describe what you believe your identity is in one sentence as a Muslim American.
Being able to, like, the identity is like representing Islam and showing American Muslims as, you know, normal people, and not being like with all the stereotypes going around on the media, you know, trying to like oppose those and like just showing people we're normal people also.
Awesome. Pass it to somebody else. Go. Next.
Yalla.
Come on. I want you guys to start getting involved. This is not,
Don't be
this is
shy.
not a lecture. We're not speakers. This is interactive.
Yalla. Come on, guys.
All right, I'm going to stand over here.
All right, don't be shy, sisters. Someone's gonna have to take the mic.
He's holding it.
Okay.
What? No.
Hey, y'all just pass it.
Okay, so.
Go ahead.
Could you like explain the? Yeah, like. How? Okay, wait. How do you want us to explain?
So,
It's too close.
just basically describing what you feel an identity is, right?
Okay, well, I think your identity is something that you strongly believe in, and like what makes you.
So it's a belief.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's go to the next person. This is what I want to hear.
Dang it, pass it that way.
Anything that comes to your mind.
I think it's what makes you who you are.
I think for me, my identity is divided into three sections. First is my religion, so it's Islam. Second is my country, which is Pakistan. And third is my local district, so me being Pashtun, so I think.
Wonderful. Excellent. This is great. This is what I want to get to.
The thing fell off.
Don't talk about me, though.
Okay, you can pass it back up here now. I did this as
Thank you very much.
I did this as a test
It's okay.
because I feel that this is a question we do not think about. We don't think about who we are. We feel, I believe, that an identity is what somebody else tells me I am. And this is a problem. When our identity is dictated to us, then we become subservient to the individual who dictates that. But when we create our own identity, when we create a sense of self-awareness, a sense of emotional intelligence that I'll get to in a little bit, then the truth comes out and we actualize and realize who we are. So I remember wanting to know more, wanting to study more. And I also remember that, people around me that were older, that maybe had come from overseas, wanted me to kind of take the middle road, I would say. Don't grow a beard out. You don't want to look too Muslim. These are our immigrant parents and teachers that are saying this to us. I remember in our masjid, there was this notion that we shouldn't be doing and learning too much because they were afraid. They were afraid to recognize the realities of what is out there. And unfortunately, I feel like that is still pervasive in our communities, that we still, it's gotten so much better, alhamdulillah, that we're actually able to sit down and have these discussions, these frank talks about, who we are as Muslim Americans. And, so we've come a long way, but I think that it's because of the pressure that's been put on us through, things like what happened on 9/11. I'm just talking now? Is this me?
No, it's not just you. So, kind of what's Samad is going off here, excuse me, is that too many times we've allowed people to, tell our narrative for us. Too many times people have told us what our identity is, and that's either on social media, the news, politics, politicians, talking heads, whatever have you. It's been too many times that we've been told who we are, and it's come to the point now in our history here in this country that we need to start we need to start writing our own narrative. We need to be the author of our own book. Instead of someone, I'm sure y'all are familiar with biographies and autobiographies, so we need to stop having people write our biographies, and we need to start writing our autobiography, writing our own narrative, writing our own story here in this country, and stop having it dictated to us. And I remember when I first became Muslim, which was back 8 months after September 11th, and the back and forth and the struggle of my identity and identifying myself as a Muslim and an American, especially since I'm probably, other than my mother who converted about 1.5 years ago, is that I was the only Muslim in my family for a long time, for the first 15 years. And I stuck out like a sore thumb. I still have family members that don't want to talk to me, because not only am I very vocal about my faith, I'm also a very leftist liberal in that sense, so I tend to be very political, so usually I either rant about religion or I rant about politics. So that's just kind of been my nature. And not only have I had to struggle with my identity within my family, within my culture, is I have to struggle with my identity is how do I fit in with the larger Muslim community. And I remember when I first became Muslim, I became the poster boy for the poster boy convert that the community would tote me around as like going, look, we finally got a white boy convert here, so I was toted around for quite a while for that. And, you try to, and one of the things that I know as converts one of the predicaments that we face with is identity, is how do we identify ourselves not only amongst our family, but how do we identify in our society here in the United States, in this country, but how does our identity fit with the larger Muslim community, whatever local community we're associated with, whether it's mostly Desi or mostly Arab or whatever have you. So the problem that many converts end up facing is that we think that being Muslim is that we also have to identify with the culture and the community that we are surrounded with. So you start seeing converts who start wearing shmor kameez, they start wearing topis all the time, or kufis all the time, or if they're around an Arab community, they start to adapt some of the Arab mentality, some of the Arab culture. So we have that struggle. What is it? And we have to find that balance within ourselves. Is what does it mean to be American and Muslim? And I remember that I had to reconcile some things. It's like going, look, it's okay to be Larry. It's okay to be me. Islam is about not changing my culture, but Islam is about when it enters into a society, it's about making what is already good with you better. That I don't have to necessarily change who I am. Is that Islam is probably a self-improvement program, for lack of a better word. It's where that we try to become better people, better who we are. We take what is already good with us, inside us, and make it better, and discard and do our best to silence the bad stuff that we deal with and that we struggle with from day to day. And I still struggle with my past. So that's always an issue that I'm having to tackle with, especially since we just came out of the holiday season here in this country. I grew up with majority of my years celebrating Christmas. So and even though I haven't celebrated Christmas in about the last 15 years, is that I still feel that tug because the rest of my family's celebrating, but me and my wife are cooped up in the house Netflixing all day, so we don't have to go out and deal with what's going on around us. So it's a struggle. My wife doesn't have to deal with it too much because she comes from Hispanic heritage and coming from Mexico. She has her own struggles with her identity as well, as she is the only, other than her mother, who converted about 4 years ago, is they have to deal with her struggle, her identity as being a Hispanic woman, a Latina, being an American citizen on top of that, because she's also a Mexican citizen and Muslim. And not only that, a woman, which is another big deal to the fact that we have obviously in the last year have dealt with gender relations, not just as Muslims, but also obviously in this country as we're dealing with heavy sexual assault and sexual harassment in this country that's coming out. So there's a lot that we're dealing with identity, and none of us are immune from this. We all deal with our struggles, whether with our families, who especially most of y'all are either your parents are immigrants or your grandparents are immigrants. So you're having to deal with, it's like going, well, I'm American, but I'm also, my parents are Pakistani or my grandparents are Pakistani, so I have Pakistani origins, or, my parents are from Syria, or my parents or grandparents are from Palestine. So you're dealing with that. Yeah, I'm from that. I have that heritage, but I'm also Muslim, because Muslim is not necessarily a part of your culture. Even though it's been adopted by your culture, Islam is separate from the cultural identity that you deal with. Plus, you're also Americans, so you're also dealing with the American identity that you're having to deal with in this country. Because let's face it, your heritage is also American. You were born in this country. You're not Palestinian. You're not Pakistani. You're not Pashto. You are Americans. Let's make that straight. Sometimes our kinfolk and our parents and your grandparents may be pushing a certain cultural perspective because they remember their attachment is to their cultural heritage back home. But so you're struggling between those two paradigms, and not only that, you're dealing with Islam, and unfortunately dealing with our current history as an ummah is that most of our cultural hang-ups are also perpetrated and projected within our faith as well. That may actually contradict with some aspects of our faith. So that happens. So we deal with this back and forth. And so, this is it's just part of identity. Just part of identity is reconciling that and coming to peace with who you are. And it's really about finding a balance. Because I know that especially, and I always have to. My base, my touching stone is the convert community and what I've dealt with the convert community and the struggles that they face, is that they don't know how to reconcile that identity because they feel that they have to adopt a whole different culture. And I have to remind them that no, you are who you are first, and Islam doesn't mean to intrude on your culture, but it makes better what is already existing within it. So that's that. And I just don't want me and Samad up here talking. What are your thoughts on this? And what are the better yet, I want to know what are some of the struggles that y'all are having to deal with, whether that be in school or with family or whatever have you. If some of y'all are working, there's different struggles that you have to deal with as well in regards to your identity. Does anybody want to offer anything? Please don't let it just be us talking. We want this to be a discussion. This is a discussion. Anybody? We gotta take her some money.
Yeah, you just speak up. Can you? You want? Is there? Do you want to?
Okay, so what you said earlier about taking like the best and like incorporating it into your religion and everything, I think culture and religion are easily confused a lot of the times, and I always tell those who don't see where the line is drawn and everything, I tell them just take what is good from your culture and only take what's good. Don't involve any messy ideals and everything like that. So that's what I feel.
What is there anything that you necessarily find that you identify that you actually struggle with yourself, whether in your school, with your family? Is there anything that you can identify with?
I mean, I just have a lot of friends who, because my mom, she's a convert, and my dad, he's from Pakistan and everything. So I have the mix of two different cultures and everything, and we usually take what's good from both of those cultures and integrate it. So.
I just wanted to clarify something to Brother Anthony. I'm visiting the United States, so I am Pakistani.
MashaAllah.
And also, secondly, I think there are two distinct things about identity in itself. First is inheriting it from your parents, and the second is it's an ongoing process. We being young, 18, 17, 16, I think it's still in the process of formation. We absorb different opinions, and then we articulate them, and then our identity comes in that way. So yeah.
Excellent. That's an excellent point. We have to remember, don't get frustrated, if you're still, if you can't pinpoint, and say, well, I'm this. Because none of us are this. I'm a father, but I'm also a son, right? I'm a teacher sometimes, but I'm definitely a student, and so we have to realize that we have many different identities, okay? But what grounds us, okay, are our values, okay? Is what we actually believe in, and we focus on, and we practice. So patience, for example, right? Perseverance. These are things that need to be practiced, okay, so that we can not be consumed or overwhelmed by our emotions. I think that's one of the most important things which, emotional intelligence speaks about, is that when we are able to, kind of grasp our emotions and use them when we need them and not be controlled by them, then, we can really elevate ourselves and become people of change, people that affect change in the society and the people around us. And that's what it really means, to me at least, to be a Muslim American, right? It's somebody who can relate to society, who can be part of society, and not necessarily part of the negative aspects of society, not somebody who, will indulge in the things that we know are wrong, but may want to tempt us, may want, it might feel good to do, A, B, C, and D. And we all know what A, B, C, and D are. I'm out of respect for, the sanctity of the Musalla, we're not going to go into that, but we all know what the things are that entice us, right? And we might feel that, hey, I can't partake in this because, I'm a Muslim, but that's not the case. We shouldn't partake in those things because we're humans and we're people of emotional intelligence. We're people that know, that we don't need to be ruled by things that give us a quick fix, but in the long run are detrimental to our health and our well-being. So when we incorporate that into our identity here as Americans and say, hey, Islam, through the different acts of worship enables me to become the epitome of a good, honest, genuine American, and that's because I have Islam, then you can start affecting change and doing the things that we really want to accomplish. Fall asleep?
No, I was listening, trying to listen at least. Yeah, sorry, it was a really long time. I was still awake. I don't know if I want to talk to these guys anymore. So I thought you wanted to say something. Yeah, I wanted to say something. It's just I don't like the jokes. What's it called? So on the topic of Muslim identity, I think there's a really big thing where there's a huge divide amongst people. There's a lot of people who, identify with really one or the other when it comes to culture, but fortunately Islam doesn't really come to. I feel like there's a lot of people who identify very strongly with their parents' culture, what they're like, like they'll be like Dil Dil Pakistan and stuff like that, and like they're all about that. And, that's what they identify as, and that's who they are. And that's really what you see. Like I know these people who have been here like 5, 10, 15 years, live majority of their life in America, but they still don't consider themselves American, and it seems like they never will. But then there are kids on the other side who, they try really, really hard to be American. Like they're like doing all these things that, Islam obviously would never accept and never will accept. But they just really, really want to be American per se. And they don't really let this, there's no real Islamic identity, I feel, really in America. People just want to choose one or the other, and Islam kind of gets lost in between. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, just to add on what the brother said before, I hunt a sister down and have her participate in this, is that yes, we do, unfortunately with having to deal with identity and where we fit with that, is that sometimes we find ourselves we tend to go to extremes on either spectrum. We either find ourselves, I'm going to be Muslim, I'm going to be Pakistani, I'm going to be Desi, I'm going to be Arab, they go to the extremes in their culture and their identity because they feel that's the only way they can identify with being Muslim. Yeah, I like this better. Let's kill this. Yep. Good. So going back to what I was saying, so we kind of find ourselves, sometimes the youth, and not just the youth, but I know dealing with converts, again, that's kind of as I said, that's my touchstone, because that's what I identify with, and of course my children, is that they find themselves in one extreme. You either identify with yourself as Muslim, but you go all the way to the part where you adapt all the cultural stuff that comes with it, because because your touchstone is your parents or your grandparents or where you came from, because that's how you identify with Islam, right? It's because it's that's part of your culture, the culture of your parents or your heritage. But on the other end, those who are trying to identify themselves as being American find that Islam is not compatible with American values and with being in America, with having that American identity. So they sometimes completely reject their Muslim identity or completely just squash it down to hide it completely. So you have two sides of the spectrum. I know that I see it. I see the whole spectrum in all shades and color here in that regards. So, but I know that's a lot that y'all are dealing with. Does anybody want to add anything like that y'all probably have experienced?
I want everybody to say something today. It's important for us to take something back with us when we leave here. And I've been guilty of this many times where I sit in a lecture and I couldn't, if you asked me a question about it 10 minutes later, I really couldn't tell you anything about it. And that's a waste of your time. So when you partake, you learn because you're more involved. So I want everybody to speak. It doesn't even matter if you just say like one word, okay? But I want you guys all to say something here today, inshallah. While you're thinking, I want to go through a quick story, and it actually is, I was talking to the gentleman today, so it popped back into my mind. But about a year ago, they started having these big protests, and people were coming to the masjids with guns and with weapons and protesting outside the mosques. And it was a group, it was a right-wing group, and I went to one of these events because I wanted to see what their grievances were. I wanted to know in person, what their issue was, okay, and maybe somehow I could change their impression. So they had this protest outside of Richardson Masjid, and they had a big group, and they had guns, and there was another group with guns, and it was really crazy. But I was focused, so I really just walked right up, which maybe I should have done in hindsight. But I walked right up to the the right wing, extremist group, to the leader, and I said, "Hey, what's up?" And so he looked at me really weird, and he's like, "Hey." And so we started talking very briefly. It had nothing to do with Islam. I mentioned a few words about, hey, the traffic and this and that. And it got lost in hindsight when another group pulled up with their guns, and the police had and we were just all surrounded by guns, and it got really intense. But the second group that was protesting against the right-wing group got very, very aggressive. And I really out loud I told them, back off, hold up. And the leader of the right-wing group kind of found that to be intriguing. And so when we made the recommendation to leave, to go maybe get some food so we could, kind of tone down, some of the rhetoric, he agreed to go. So we actually took like 4 or 5 of these kind of hardcore right-wing guys that were, that have been on like BBC, that have been on, multiple news stations. We took them to halal guys. The news cameras came with us, and it was the first time. They were like, "Are you guys going to poison our food?" I was like, "No, don't worry about it. You're going to love it." And they absolutely loved the halal food. But more importantly, we were able to sit on a table and speak very frankly with each other. And there was many things that he learned from that, and there was a lot of pressure that came on me, and people were like, it's not going to make a difference, these guys are lick. He messaged me today and told me that David messaged me today and said, we are not going to protest outside mosques anymore. Okay? And I was like, okay, why is that? And he told me that, our conversations, over the past few months have made, him realize that, there is a common ground. He doesn't know where the common ground is, okay? But he thinks that, there can be common ground. So, this organization that I work with called Faith in Texas was doing a fundraising event. And he made kind of like a snide remark on the Facebook post, and I asked him. He asked me what I responded with, and I said it would be wonderful if somebody like you, who's the head of a famous right-wing extremist group, would help and donate to a social justice cause. And he said, "Fine, I will do that if you help me, fight radical Islamic terror." And I said, only if you change the name from radical Islamic terror to terror, right? Not Islamic terror. And he said, okay. So, we're going to sit and we're going to talk. But it all started initially when I did not lose my patience. I did not become, somebody who became emotional, and that emotion dictated the way I thought. And when you're able to do that, okay, you're able to start really making the differences that we need to make as Muslims, right? So we know what Islam is. Islam is not just doing the acts of worship. Okay, that's the means to what we need to achieve. And so, I'm sure we all have stories like that we can talk about, where certain things were going on and that we were able to, based on our faith, intervene and improve the situation. So maybe you guys can talk about. I'm just trying to figure out ways so you guys can get involved here. Maybe you guys can talk about a story or two that you guys have had where you guys used your faith to alter a situation and made the situation better. Come on. No, they just don't want to do anything. It's the holidays and they're just like, I don't want to do anything. Yes, inshallah, brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. During my lifetime, I was working for a CPA firm, and when I became CPA and opened my own practice, I had all the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. So I told my secretary the timing of my salah time, that the prayer time for Zohar and Asr, because I was able to go home. This was summertime. I was able to go home for Maghrib. So she would remind me, this is your prayer time for Zohar or the Asr. And during winter, these prayer time was so close to each other, and we did all that. Then summer came again, and I was able to go home for lunch and do the Zohar, and then come back, and Asr was 5:30, and then she told me, said, what happened to your prayer time? Just because you became prosperous and you forgot your prayers? No. I said, no, I have the different timing now during summer. The winter was so close that I did everything in my office, but in summer I could go home and do the salah, prayers. So that was an education for her.
Yeah. I mean, these are examples of our relationships we have with non-Muslims, right? This is the dawah that we talk about is not standing there in the corner saying, come to Islam. It's having friendships, okay, that are meaningful. Okay, having a friend that can depend on you, right? Like being al-amin, being somebody who is trustworthy, being somebody who people can depend on, right? That's what your identity is as an American Muslim, right? You're an American, and you're somebody who's like the best of Americans, somebody who can really help achieve what other people want. Who's looking tired and not looking away from me? Just do you have any story at all about your interaction with a non-Muslim that maybe improved his status at all because of something that you learned through Islam?
I spent most of my lifetime in Malaysia, so I grew up near other Muslims. So even when there were non-Muslims, they wouldn't be scared of the Muslims since it was a majority. So sometimes we would talk, no matter where it was, even if it was in an Uber. So we would just talk about life issues and usually just bond through those times.
So you lived in a Muslim majority country for, I don't know how old you are now, but like for a majority, well, not maybe not a majority of your life, but like a good portion of your life. How has that, in that sense that like, oh, I've been around other Muslims and like being Muslim is normal to non-Muslims. How has that like affected you being in a place that being Muslim isn't necessarily normal for other people? If I can rephrase the question, but like, not necessarily. How has your experience being a Malaysian in Malaysia, like, affected you being a Muslim? Because like, here, people, I mean, Muslims know what like Malaysia is, but like, otherwise you're like, oh, I'm a Muslim. So like, how has being a Muslim in Malaysia affected you being a Muslim in America, type of thing? Does that make sense at all?
So basically, so what's your name, brother? Yusuf. So Yusuf, I don't know if you guys heard the story here, but this brother is from Malaysia, and he grew up in Malaysia. So he was describing and saying, well, you know, I'm coming from where the majority of people are Muslims, and the minority, you know, knows the Muslims. And so basically his, you know, the way he grew up and his identity is completely different than our identity, right? We grew up, we're growing up as minorities, you know, in a majority Christian country. And he grew up as a majority Muslim in a Christian minority country. So that, in essence, really shows that, you know, his identity in Malaysia is obviously different than his identity here in America. But what does that mean? What does that really entail? How is now that he's are you an American now? Yeah. So now that he's an American Muslim, okay, his identity is going to be different. So this is constantly evolving. So I wouldn't get, you know, I know it can be difficult sometimes. You know, like we live in a society that's very, very, very difficult to be a Muslim in. We do. You know, we're constantly bombarded with, you know, negativity. We're constantly bombarded with the dunya, and Islam teaches us to run from the dunya. So what are we really supposed to do? How are we going to bring the two together? That's the question that I want you guys to think about. I want you guys to ponder this question. It's probably one of the most important questions, okay, that if you guys start thinking about, will propel your Islam forward. Because a lot of times we just go through the emotions, like right now. You know, half the people here, and it's fine because, you know, I do it, it happens at all the talks, but, you know, you kind of zone out, you get in your own little world, and you start thinking about things that you need to do, yada, yada, yada. And we're not really learning that way. We're not really making ourselves better. You know what I mean? The whole point of doing the acts of worship, right, are to improve to improve so that, you know, you're in the same state, right? Like ihsan is really being in that state all the time of recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recognizing, you know, that we're in this world, we are all living together, okay? How am I going to be the person that Allah wants me to be in this society? If we're cognizant of this fact all the time, okay, that you will start feeling a difference. You know, there's a lot of depression even amongst, you know, the Muslim population. You know, there's countless stories. There are countless stories, and you know, every single day I listen to, and there are heartbreaking horror stories of little children and you know, from abuse. We all know the Me Too kind of what started on, hashtag Me Too that's been going on. And this is something that we don't talk about as Muslims. We think that we're immune to it, and we know that we're not immune to it now. We all know that we're not immune to the problems of the society. So, but why are we not talking about it? Why are we not having any frank discussions about this? Mostly in this setting. Right? We need to be champions. We need to be the people that are the ones that are at the forefront of fighting against sexism and abuse. But we're silent. We're not even having the discussion. Why is that the case? We need to think about these questions. It's very important that because we're affected by them. And if you're not, probably the person next to you is. So just because we haven't experienced something doesn't mean it's not affecting people that are very close to us. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to affect us later on in our life. So, it's not time to ignore these problems. It's time to, stand up and speak about them. And I think that we are starting to do that, but we need more forums like this that we can sit down and have frank discussions. Like, eventually I want all of us, we shouldn't even be talking here. You know what I mean? It should be you guys expressing, your frustrations. It should be you guys saying, this is my issue with the Masjid. This is my issue with this person, or this is my issue with this thing. And then, that's how we learn from each other. Like a lot of times, I cannot relate to the imam that's standing up there giving the Friday Jummah khutbah, and I zone out because I'm like, how am I can't relate to you. And I'm sure that you guys feel the same way all the time. And that needs to change. We need to be able to express, these type of things in these type of forums, or else we're not going to improve. We're going to stay the status quo. And unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of being in the status quo anymore.
Just for the side note here, everybody's been given a little card here with a pen. If you have any questions, please fill it out so we can collect them all, and we can, me and Samad will be able to answer some of your questions. We already have a couple here. But if you please fill out whatever questions you may have so we can get those all collected and we can answer your questions, inshallah. But I'll point that... Please ask a question. Yeah. We're not going to talk, ask inshallah. So, something that I want to bring up, and something that I know y'all haven't probably really thought about, but y'all are the future of Islam in this country. There's going to come to a point that people like your parents, your grandparents are going to have passed away, and you're going to be having your own families. And so this is something that y'all need to understand. It's something that y'all need to deal with now, because as you become older and you get ready to graduate high school and you go off to college and then you go get married and all these things, you're going to start asking, even in yourself, is how do I rectify my identity as a Muslim American in this country? How do I deal with that issue? This is why we get these talks. We plant the seeds now, so we'll understand how to develop these as we continue to grow up in this country and deal with the issues that are in here. Inshallah ta'ala, hopefully things will become better. But right now we're at a pinnacle point in our country, and all eyes are on us. All eyes are on us. There's not one time that whether it's social media, whether it's on Fox News, or whether it's on CNN or MSNBC, that they are not talking about Islam or Muslims. That's just a fact that we're dealing with now. And so it's going to come to a point where we have to address these issues. Is how do I deal with being an American Muslim? What does that mean for me? How do I identify that self? Am I in complete contradiction of both? How do I reconcile with that? How do I marry the two? And just to let you know, it's doable. There is not a contradiction between being an American here in this country and being a Muslim. It took me a bit to become more mature in my faith and my deen, and to find that balance. But we need to start talking about that now. Y'all may not be thinking about it now because y'all don't have these responsibilities on y'all. You care about is making sure that, oh my God, I have a final coming up. I need to make, I'm worried about my final grades and this kind of stuff. And is Baba and when we going to be mad at me? This kind of thing. So these are your concerns now. Y'all aren't even thinking about employment yet. Y'all aren't even there yet. But as you continue to mature and grow and with your experiences and grow up here, that you're going to have to come to, that crossroads is how do I deal with being that? And unfortunately, I have seen both with the immigrant community and the children who are born from the immigrant community, as well as the converts and the children that they have, as the born Muslims come into this country from the people who are converts, they're dealing like, well, do I continue to find this identity, or do I reject it completely? And right now we are dealing with that, because whether or not we want to admit it or not, the people who come to the Masjid, the Muslims who come to the Masjid, is a fraction of the Muslim community. We are a minority. Most of the Muslims in this country don't go to the Masjid. They don't pray, they don't fast, they just identify culturally as Muslim, and that it. Trust me, I know, I work with them. So I know that for a fact. So they come to the point where like going, they've come to the point in their identity, and they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they've had their children, they're starting to have their grandchildren. They've come to the point like going, you know what, I can't reconcile my identity as being American and Muslim. So they completely assimilate, and they become, well, the only way I can fit in is I completely absorb the American culture, and I reject my Muslim identity completely. And a lot of them have done that. So the fact that y'all are here today, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put y'all here today, is a mercy and a blessing. So we can start having these discussions now. The Prophet, peace be upon him, had to deal with this as well in his community, as they were coming out of Jahiliyyah, and they were converting to Islam, and they were trying to, how do we deal with these cultures? And many of them were the only Muslim in their families. They were converts. They weren't like all of a sudden born Muslim. Umar ibn al-Khattab was not born Muslim. Muawiyah was not, Ibn Abu Sufyan was not Muslim. His father was one of the biggest enemies of Islam before they converted. In regards, as well as Hind, his wife Hind, and the others. We had big enemies with Islam that ended up coming into Islam, and they were dealing with their identities as well. And it reminds me of in the Sirah when Umar ibn Khattab, he would laugh about the times in Jahiliyyah and about how they would worship idols. He's like, when he wanted to worship, he would make an idol out of dates, right? But then he'd get hungry, and then he would eat the idol. And then he'd get mad and make another one, and because he wanted to worship. So they were completely always dealing with, their Jahiliyyah time, and now that I'm Muslim, and moving forward with that. But the fact that they were the best of generations, they understood that they were able to take the best of their culture and the best of what the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave them, which made them better people. And that's what we need to internalize as well, is that Islam has come to make us better people, right? It's to take what is already good, inshallah. So,
again, it takes practice. So this is something that we need to practice daily. When we talk to people, when we deal with people, we have to be conscious. Hey, am I, I'm not, overreacting here. I'm not getting angry. When you're conscious of these things, then you can start improving on it. Until that point, we're really not going to be able to, really help ourselves and other people around us. So practice is the most important thing, and practice in being confident, right? We need to be confident that, what I've learned and what Islam has taught me is the best way. And so if somebody else is doing something that's not in accordance to that, okay, be confident that, it's okay, I'm right. But at the same time, don't judge that person. And that's where a lot of us go awry. A lot of us, might be praying 5 times a day, might be, wearing the hijab, but there's something inside of us that, unfortunately, where we might look down upon people that aren't doing those things and saying, I'm at least doing that. And that is one of the biggest tricks of shaitan. So as long as we're conscious of that, as long as we're constantly remembering and recognizing, who we are and what our purpose is, as Muslims living in this society, okay, our identity will begin to come into our vision. We will start recognizing, oh, this is what it is to be an American Muslim. It's a process. It takes time. It's not going to happen right away. And don't get frustrated. One of the biggest things is that we get frustrated. We get upset. We're like, why is this such and such thing happening? Why can't we do anything about it? We will be. You will be. But we have to let our experiences dictate what we do and how we act, right? And the only way to do that is getting out there. We need to be able to interact with non-Muslims. I wish we had, a day, we had brought, everybody's required to bring a non-Muslim friend here with them, to have this discussion, to be by your side, to talk to you. I think that every time we do anything, we should involve non-Muslims, right? Mostly when we're, in the masjid and we're building confidence within ourselves, we should always try to bring non-Muslims with us to, kind of show them who we are as people. That's going to build confidence inside of us, and it's going to help spread, the word that we know to be the truth. So, you want to go through some questions?
Let's go ahead and collect all the cards if y'all have already filled them out, so we can go ahead, because I know we're going to be running out of time soon, because they have Salat in about half an hour. So let's go ahead and collect all the cards that y'all have filled out, if y'all filled out any. And if I could get someone from the sister side to go ahead and collect what we already have, if y'all haven't done so. Does anybody have any cards that they have filled out? Do we have everybody's on this side? Brothers? Oof. Jazakallah. Okay, we're gonna keep it short. Okay, inshallah. Okay, we'll have a sit on this one. Okay, inshallah. Bismillah. How do we represent here's the first question, not from the sister side. It looks like I have here, maybe not. I think so. How do we represent ourselves as Muslims when we're surrounded by non-Muslim friends without feeling outnumbered? Just be yourself. That's how I can just be yourself. Show them that again, it's with rectifying your identity. Coming to compromise with your identity here, rectifying that issue, is just be yourself. Show them that the friend that you are, and show them the positive aspects of your faith, that they are the same as yours. And I know that you may be bombarded with some of the negative things that they may be hearing, and they may ask you some questions. And if you know some things, go ahead and and voice their concerns or what you think, and but the big thing is to be patient. And if you don't know something, if they ask you a question that you're not sure how to answer, go ask somebody that may know, that help you with that. But I know, yeah.
Feel outnumbered. It's good. It's good for us. Okay. Feeling outnumbered, okay, is representation that we're not confident in who we are. Feel outnumbered. We need to feel it and embrace it and say, I don't care if it's 1,000,000 to 1. I am confident in who I am as a Muslim. And when we do that, you're not even gonna care. You're gonna be yourself, and people are gonna love you for who you are. So there's a question here: how do we deal with racism in our community? That's a whole different lecture. But I do want to say that we need to embrace our African American community. I think that is the most vital thing for us to do. And if our elder generation didn't do it, we have to do it as youth. Because you talk about American Muslim identity, okay? The African Americans are the American Muslim identity. Okay, they're the ones who have established, Islam in here for generations, and there were Muslim slaves here, and we can talk about it, but they helped shape, are the American system. And they have struggled way more than we have. And so we need to go to them. They helped establish the communities here. Masjid al-Islam downtown, I mean, they shouldn't have to go around asking for funds to build the masajid. We should be building these masajids for them. Because when the first Muslims came, where do you think they went? They went there. And they helped us. All the inner city masajids, WD Muhammad, these are individuals who we need to elevate in our faith, in our settings. And when we do that, okay, we're going to be more grounded in this society. It doesn't matter what people say. It's a scary time out there. We have people that are at the highest level of our governments, saying really, really terrible things about Muslims and who we are, and there's people on the ground that are acting out on those beliefs. So we're in a time that we need to be very vigilant, and when we embrace, the people that were here before us, and listen to their stories and their struggles, it's going to really help us move forward.
Oh, some of these are really good. Okay, here's one here. How do I deal with a person who tried to pull off my hijab at a school that I have confronted in a nice way but just won't leave me alone? Note, my school doesn't really do anything about it. I only became a hijabi recently, so this was recent. Well, this seems like more of an issue that probably CAIR could probably get involved in here, especially if you have a school that your school does not want to respond or effectively deal with this issue. Unfortunately, some people don't come toward, deal with niceness in a good way. And dealing with discrimination or attacks like this, because this is an attack, just to let you know, this is considered assault, and this is actually criminal. So if nothing is being done by the school, then you need to go outside and have someone help you, and and I have to direct that to Mr. Samad about this.
So, fighting the bullying that's going on in schools, before it gets to violence, once somebody touches you, okay, game's over. But until that point, okay, there's a psychology behind bullying. And that's something that we all need to start understanding, is when how a bully works is by intimidation. So he gets really loud and he gets boisterous and he brings all his boys and there's no bully that's, quietly bullying you, being like, oh, you're a Muslim. Like a bully is somebody who's loud and obnoxious, and he's expecting you to return that back to him. Or her. But when we stop caring, okay, or act like we don't care what the person is doing, okay, yeah, maybe the second time he's going to be just as loud, but eventually his voice is going to get quieter and quieter when he realizes he's having no effect on you at all. And they will stop. Unless it's an extreme case. If you show that you're just like, so what? Who cares? You say hi to him. You say hi to him or her every day when you walk in the door. Hey, how you doing this morning? Because you don't care. It's not affecting you, right? That's emotional intelligence. That's not letting your emotions ride you. And when you do that, you will see that it will end. It will stop. I have a question right here. How do you cope with your own family hating you? This is a very, very, very difficult question, because family is such an important part, an integral part to being a human being. It's what binds us. What they say is blood. Blood relations, genetic relations. There's things that bind us together. And family is one of those things. And so when you're in a situation where your family, you're really being pulled apart because, there's abuse going on, and it really depends on what they're hating you for, but there's very few things that anybody should hate anybody for. Okay? And most of the time it's probably not legitimate. So how do you counter hate? You counter it with love. You show emotional intelligence. You do not let it affect you. And you smile, okay? And you do the same thing the next day. And eventually, okay, you'll see that diminish. We have to be able to be people that are intelligent, not just in our books. I'm sure all of you guys, mashallah, are like straight A students and, inshallah, all probably going to med school, all that stuff. But yeah, that's great. We're helping other people. We're doing the things that we need to do for the dunya. But the other aspect is, being grounded, being confident, and understanding, how the world works and the way people work. And when you start understanding that, you're going to become somebody who, really gets to the next level and begins to love, who they are and what their identity is.
I got one here that's fairly convoluted, actually asking 3 different questions. I kind of want to address this.
It's the last one, too.
Okay, we're going to have to let this be the last one because we need to eat. Inshallah, I'm sure y'all would like to have some pizza and stuff. So this one, so the first question is, how do you suggest the youth build a proper Muslim identity while dealing with mostly immigrant-run masajid who do not understand nor want to understand America and its culture? Oof, that's big. Well, my suggestion is that for the youth need to become a little bit more involved and to not only involved in your local community, but also to be involved in your deen, to understand your deen better, so that you can apply that in your masajids. Because in the end, it's sure that because the people who are running these masajid now, they're not going to be there forever. There'll come to a time that you can ascend to that position and try and change that. It's a struggle. I know that even as converts that we have to deal with. I know that there are several converts don't like going to the masajid because of the overarching culture in it. So that's pretty. It's going to take the youth to become involved in your community and to change that. Second part is, how do you suggest we address the majority of speakers and religious leaders who do not or don't know how to attract and engage the youth? I think that most, I'm sure that this is a continuing struggle for them but I think that is changing because we have a lot of imams and shuyukh that are coming up that were born and raised here. We're having a lot more homegrown scholars here instead of having to import most of them. But I think that is changing, and it's to let them. And for that, you need to let them know that you want more. Is to talk to your shuyukh, to talk to your sheikh, to talk to your imam, and the local scholars, and tell them what you were looking for in that. So you need to make that initiative and to engage with that. And the last question on this is, how do we deal with self-segregation in the Muslim community, especially when it is essentially erected and encouraged by the adults and elders? And again, that's going to take for you to get involved in your local community and understanding Islam and that issue. I understand that a lot of the segregation, and there's differences of opinion on that, and I don't want to get into fiqh matters. There's differences of opinion on it. I tend to not like the whole segregation thing because as Islam grew, there was adab and regarding and dealing with the opposite sex. So there's a lot of this is dealing with cultural issues as well. So that's, again, a lot of this has to do with the youth having to become involved in their communities and trying pushing change in their local communities. It's not going to happen on its own unless you get involved.
I think inshallah we're going to end. You start by changing it yourself. If there's segregation going on, between different ethnicities in the masjid, make it a goal to invite those people that are segregated to every single one of your events and every single one of your little get-togethers. That's how you change it. It's very easy to blame other people. Oh, it's this so-and-so. Anybody can do that, you know? But, you know, changing things yourself, being the individual that is the change. Okay, that's who we have to be. You know, like, there's a difference between a honeybee and a parrot. A parrot is something that just repeats back what it hears. Repeats, repeats, repeats. What is the honey? The honeybee, okay, we wouldn't have, you know, our vegetation without the bees cross-pollination, right? So what does the bee do? It takes something bitter and turns it into something sweet. So let that be our identity, you know, as Muslim Americans. You know, people that turn things that could be bitter into things that are sweet. It's very easy to be good to those that are good to you, okay? But being good to those that are bad to you, that's something that Islam teaches us to do. So thank you for your time. These questions are amazing. I can't tell you how profound, you know, these questions are, and there's issues, and we have problems in our communities that we are not addressing. Okay, these questions are a prime example of that. So, you know, I would encourage you guys to, you know, tell the community, the Masjid here, that you want to do more programs, you know, that enable us to learn about our day-to-day struggles, because I think like the vast majority of our struggles are not even being broached, you know, by our communities, and that's a problem, you know. And to establish our identity, okay, we need to hit that problem head on. So I thank you guys for being here. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And give us feedback. So give us feedback too, inshallah, when you guys get a chance.
Jazakallah khair for coming. Assalamu alaikum.
So we do have food in the back, but we only have one table, and
Stay here. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, just a quick advertisement. On the 28th, there's going to be a event that Epic Youth is having, an interfaith event, talking about the birth of Jesus from the Christian perspective and also the Islamic perspective. Inshallah, we're bringing a pastor in, and he'll talk about it from the Christian perspective, and Imam Nadim will talk about it from the Islamic perspective. And yeah.
So back to the food. We're gonna have the ladies go first, just down the tables in that rotunda down there. So just please go get food, go through. There's pizza, cookies, chips, juice. So go get that, and then our guys, we can follow them.